Welcome to a sparkling new podcast from Mike Parry and Mike Graham. We're the two Mikes.
Actually, it sounds even better when you do it Dullsville, because when you try to be happy and excited and energetic, you sound pathetic.
Thanks.
Look at the light! And what I did was, I hid behind my door.
Right.
When the cat came close enough, I went, "No! Noir Blanco Fariari."
Oh, yeah. This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. Mike Parry is here for another edition of The Two Mikes. It's time to say a very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
Yeah, very good morning to you as well, Mike. Great to be here because I did enjoy the banter all day about Raheem Sterling. I take on your point about football agents, and the role of the football agent now has changed dramatically from 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Because 10 or 15 years ago, footballers thought they needed an agent to go and negotiate contracts which were moving from £3,000 or £4,000 a week to £10,000 or £15,000 a week.
And 20 odd years ago, presumably, they just had to chat with the manager themselves. They didn't even have an agent, a lot of them, did they?
No, a lot of them didn't. No. I mean, to be perfectly honest, when the boys were coming into the game, it was the parents used to go and see the manager. Sir Alex Ferguson once rang up Joe Cole's mother at home and said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And she was absolutely stunned.
Right.
And that's how it happened for a lot of players in those days. Wayne Rooney had exactly the same approach from Everton.
Yeah.
And people at Everton, who wanted to get him on board. But what I'm saying is now, a lot of footballers get much more savvy about the way business goes.
Well, there's a lot more money involved, isn't there?
Well, yeah, but what they're saying is because there's so much more money involved, a lot of players are saying, hang on, I am worth £300,000 a week, whether I've got an agent telling the club that or me telling the club that. Why do I want to give 15% of that to a man who's a middleman?
Yeah.
I don't need one. Roy Keane never had an agent. Really? He just got his mate, who was an Irish solicitor, lawyer, just to endorse things for him.
But this is the thing.
I
mean, I think I could become an agent reasonably easily now.
Yeah,
500 quid down, and all you need is a few connections. And all you really need, I was saying to the boys on a sports bar, we've got a friend who went into the PR business, and he only had one client for the first 2 or 3 years.
That's right.
One client made so much money because it was Andrew Lloyd Webber that he didn't need anybody else.
His second client was Elton John.
Yeah, well, but by that stage, everything's going very well. But what I'm saying is that you could get one Premier League footballer, and you could basically live off that for the rest of your life.
No, I totally agree. Well, I mean, where an agent now is useful to a footballer is nothing to do with the relationship between the footballer and the football club. It's how you cash in then commercially.
On image rights and all that sort of thing.
Image rights, the watch deal. I mean, the Beckham approach to life was make myself a famous footballer first, marry a Spice Girl for the glamour image. Are you
suggesting he didn't marry her for love?
Oh, of course he did. Of course he did. But it was it was a great marriage for both of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you go and find professional PR people who will reach out into the world to find out just how expansive your commercial appeal to the world is. And that's when you end up on posters advertising whiskey in Tokyo. And that's when you end up on posters...
you end up like Joe Hart doing an advert for dandruff shampoo.
Yeah, you do. Or you end up on a billboard in Times Square in America advertising underpants or something like that. Yeah. And that's what agents are needed for. They're not needed anymore for the relationship with football clubs, because Raheem Sterling is saying no to contracts which seem to have gone from 35,000 a week, which is on now, to 100, then 140. People saying 180. Well, hang on. If he's got an agent negotiating up, but he doesn't want to sign the contract, what good is the agent?
Well, true, but I mean, if the agent's managed to get it up from 40,000 up to 180,000, that's not bad business, is it?
Yeah, but to be perfectly honest, I think it's more impactful when the manager put his arm round Raheem Sterling and says, "All right, son, I've got you up to 100,000 now. Is that okay?"
Yeah, but he's done that, and it's not worked.
No, sir, it's not. I don't want it.
Yeah.
That is much more impactful than an agent, because what I'm saying is a manager will always suspect an agent is doing it for his own ends, because 15% of 140,000 is better than 15% of 100,000.
But one of the things they're going to do is cap the amount that the agents can get. But I mean, the back page of the Mirror this morning is saying basically that if he'd been offered the deal last year, he would have taken it. But he now obviously feels somehow slighted, doesn't he?
Yeah, but this gets to the whole issue with Sterling. You see, I don't think people are seeing through the fog. I can see through the fog, okay? And what I'm saying is this. It is nothing to do with the money, because what Raheem Sterling really is saying, and I can see it in huge letters, and in fact, I'll choose tomorrow morning's Daily Mail. Is there any way back? Liverpool. This morning, sorry, is there any way back? Liverpool fume as Sterling goes on TV to admit he rejected 100k a week. What Raheem Sterling is saying in a roundabout sort of way is, I don't want to play for Liverpool anymore.
I agree.
Because Liverpool are not a big enough club for me now.
Yeah.
They're not big enough for me.
And I don't know whether
I want to go and win things.
And do you think that's because the agents and those around him have been whispering in his ear, saying that exact thing, saying that Liverpool are not going to make the Champions League, so you don't really want to play in the Europa League.
No.
You don't really want to play in a situation where you're not going to win the Premier League. So why is he leaving?
Because I think he's worked that out for himself.
Do you?
I think he worked out when Luis Suarez left and then Sturridge was out of the team for such a long time.
Yeah.
Liverpool are a very average club. He was carrying the club. That's why the figures have become astronomical, because he sees himself as the number one man.
Yeah, but he wasn't, though, because during that period when he was carrying the club, they weren't doing very well.
Well, in the first half of the season they weren't, but since then they have.
Yeah, but since Sturridge came back, though.
Well, OK, since Sturridge came back. He's a key man there anyway. And I think that from looking at him, his approach to it, and I've been watching him for a couple of years, I've seen him in 3 Everton-Liverpool games, and he's always been outstanding. And my view is that Raheem Sterling knows his own worth, not just in pounds per week, but in the fact that he wants to start clocking up honours. And my view is he would ideally love to ring up Jose Mourinho, I'm not saying that he ever will, and go to Chelsea.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time Chelsea kind of nipped in when he thought he was going to go to Arsenal.
That's right.
But I've said this before, and I said it last night as well, that, for me, a very key statement that he made when he was being interviewed after that Lithuania game was that basically, I'm so delighted to have scored my first goal for England at Wembley in my home city. Now, you don't say in my home city, it's London, if you're playing for Liverpool, surely.
I totally agree with you. I mean, a lot of the angst and burden between Liverpool fans and other fans over the years has been in our Liverpool home syndrome, in our Liverpool home.
Well, you take anybody from Dini Hamann to Kenny Dalglish to Graham Souness to any number of players who weren't for Liverpool. When they were playing for Liverpool was their home city.
No, absolutely. And it's daft to call your home city anywhere else if you're wearing that red shirt. That I totally agree. I believe in this Mail thing. They're insightful. Ian Ladyman's their Northern football correspondent. Is there any way back? Because I think you're absolutely right. I think hasn't he already hinted that he wanted to play for it? No, sorry, that was our player. That was
he's hinted
Lukaku.
That he said he's flattered by interest from Arsenal.
But what I'm saying is he is not what the Liverpool fans require for a player wearing red jersey, and that is a badge kisser. A badge kisser is normally a derogatory term for a player at a club from other fans, but Raheem Sterling has not shown the badge kissing technique at Liverpool, and I think you're right. I think Liverpool fans are a bit wary about his commitment to the club.
And I think many of them are getting fed up with
him. I think for once you've actually, maybe
I was going to say,
seen through the fog. I see through the fog all the time. I've got fog goggles.
Fog goggles, not easy to say that.
Yeah.
I'm slightly troubled by your approach this evening because you're being all conciliatory, you're agreeing with me, saying, I'm right, which you never do, right? And you're obviously feeling guilty about that horrendous prank you played on me, like a 7-year-old child yesterday.
No.
Now, the reason we didn't talk about it on the air, there's a video on YouTube on Too Much TV, which a lot of people have already seen. Go to it and have a look. Where you, first of all, you let a popper off behind my head.
I did,
right? And then you maybe jump out of my skin. And then, by way of reparation, served me up with a toothpaste-filled Oreo cookie.
That's right. It was very funny.
Right?
I
was so angry, actually.
So funny.
I had to, thank goodness I'm such a professional broadcaster. I was so angry last night, I didn't want to mention it.
No.
Because it was embarrassing.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. I'm being quite nice to you, not because I want to be conciliatory. I just don't want you to wreak revenge on me.
Well, I'm going to.
Well, no,
I'm sorry.
No,
it's going to happen.
That'd be childish.
But I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to do it, so I'm going to let you worry about it. You're going to be looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life.
I'm going to tell the audience just how bright I am compared to you. My psychology worked. I offered you a packet of Oreos. Yeah. And you said, have you done anything? I said no. And then you said, well,
because I suspected something of foul play.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
So the first one in the packet, which was a normal Oreo, I picked it up and I munched it. I said, it's lovely. It was the second one that I'd split in half. I'd scraped all the cream out. And I'd put Colgate
it's disgraceful way
toothpaste in it, right? Put it back together. Yeah. You, of course, fell into my trap. Yeah. And you picked up the Oreo and said, okay, then you bit into it. And, of course, all you got was...
that was disgusting.
Colgate all over your mouth.
It was horrible.
Oh, you were easy to fool.
All day, I've had this kind of repetitive sort of taste of toothpaste.
I know, because you swallowed it. You swallowed it. I know. It was great.
Horrible.
I loved it.
Anyway, I'm telling you now, I'm going to put you on notice, right? Yeah. That I will get you back, but I'm not telling you when.
I'm smart than the average bear.
You're just going to have to wait now and see when some revenge is going to be one day when you least expect it. It might be today, it might be tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of your life, as they say in Casablanca, it will happen. So keep looking over your shoulder, Porky. He's Mike Parry, I'm Mike Graham. We're going to talk about the Beatles and John Lennon coming up next.
Talk Sport on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM, the enduring home of football.
It's modern radio, only better.
Talk Sport.
Well, because, I don't think we've yet done a show where John Lennon hasn't been mentioned, but for once, actually, there's a reason for mentioning John Lennon. Because the papers are full of the stories, many of them on the front page this morning, about the death of Cynthia Lennon. John Lennon's first wife died yesterday at the age of 75 after a short battle with cancer.
Terrible. In Mallorca, I think, where she was living there. It's a very sad story. It's not a shocking story. We all die. 75. She's been the same age as John Lennon now, because they met at Art College in Liverpool. But what sums it up, really, is the Daily Mail have got Ray Connolly to do it. Ray Connolly is an acknowledged Beatles expert.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
In fact, he was on an aeroplane flying to New York to interview John Lennon when mid-flight he was notified John Lennon had been shot dead.
Really?
Yes, outside the Dakota.
Had he been over in New York sort of talking to him or interviewing him?
He was on his way to see him.
Oh, he was on his way to see him.
He was on his way from London to New York. Pre-arranged. He was going to stay with him for a couple of days and do a big interview with him. And so Ray is very much an acknowledged expert. And so it's by Ray Connolly, you knew them both, 2-page spread here in the Mail. And the headline says, Cynthia, the secret wife John Lennon treated so very cruelly.
Yes. Well, this was what I wanted to say to you.
And that's what it's all about.
Because you tweeted out earlier on when you found out the news and said how terribly sad it was. But, I mean, everything I've read about their relationship and everything I've read since her death was announced puts him in a terrible light.
Oh,
and, I mean,
shocking.
you paint him as a kind of a demigod, really, because he's one of your heroes.
I do.
And I'd have to say, looking at the way that he treated her and the way that their marriage wasn't really even a proper marriage, and it only lasted 6 years anyway, I mean, morals of an alley cat doesn't come into it.
No, it doesn't. I mean, if you think
You're not going to agree with me again, are you?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, yeah.
Unbelievable.
You think about the morals of the early 60s. When you got a girl pregnant, you married her.
Yeah.
That's exactly what John Lennon did. John Lennon was louche. I mean, from the age of 14 or 15, his relationship with women were that they were merely chattels for his, to seek his pleasure, and bunk-ups behind the bike sheds, and he went to the art school in Liverpool.
Which is where he met Cynthia.
Yeah, exactly, and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually she fell pregnant, better get married and all that kind of stuff. And that was before he was anywhere near famous. I mean, he hadn't even formed the Quarrymen by then,
And that was Julian that she was pregnant with then, right?
She's pregnant with Julian. Julian's born. And then, of course, now... we've told the story before of you going to the marriage guidance counsellor and have you got anything else to admit to? And you said, yes, you admitted to 6 affairs, right? That's a fact of life.
Well, I've never admitted to 6 affairs, actually. The number has never been released.
Well, you've told me that in the past.
Well, I don't know. I think you've made that number up.
No, I haven't made that up. No,
I don't think I was specific
But anyway, that's not in dispute.
Anyway, this is not about me. This is about John Lennon.
Exactly.
Why are you making it about me?
Because I'm telling you what happened.
Yeah. He's much worse than I was.
He got back from a tour to the family home in Surrey and walked in and Cynthia was there, and he'd lost interest in the marriage altogether then, and he said to, Cynthia, I'm not sure, and she said, there hasn't been another woman.
Yeah.
And Lennon's reply was, there's been hundreds.
Yeah.
And
that's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, when he'd been on tour, groupies and all that, he literally said there's been hundreds.
Yeah.
So she took it then that there's nothing. Anyway, she then goes away, and the next time...
You think he was ever in love with her?
I don't know. I suppose a teenage thing or something like that. I don't know. But where it all finally fell apart was when she went away and they were kind of living separate lives. But she came back to their home in Surrey and walked through the door, and a little Japanese woman was wearing her dressing gown.
And that would be Yoko Ono.
That was Yoko Ono, of course, yeah. And whilst Cynthia had been away, John had moved Yoko Ono into the family home.
Which is one of the worst things you can do, that.
Well, I mean, it's not very subtle and it's not very nice, is it?
Well, it's not. No, it's awful.
Yeah,
I mean, because, this is the place where she lived. But, I mean, worse than that for me was the fact that she could never really even be acknowledged properly as his wife. No. Because when she married him, when they were still starting out...
Brian Epstein said, don't tell anybody.
And Epstein, first of all, he was against it. And when he said, well, OK, you have to do it, he made them do it more or less in secret.
That's right.
I read some quotes from Ringo Starr who said, I don't think there were any wedding presents, there wasn't really a reception.
That's right.
They went to the chicken bar across the street after they got married. And she was never acknowledged as his wife, which for a woman is one of the worst things that you can ever have.
Well, I'm sure you're right.
You can't even be, you can't be somebody. It's one of the things that mistresses always complain about, is that they can't be seen out in public with their love, the man that they love, and they can't be acknowledged as any part of his life.
That's right. That's why crazy mistresses go around driving up and down past their lovers' homes on Christmas Day.
Do they?
Just to look through.
So I remember you told that story,
to look through the window and see them playing with their children, the fairy lights and all that, while the mistress goes back to a cold flat.
Yeah.
But no, it was even worse than that here, because not only was she kept in the background all that. The thing is, it's for a purely commercial reason. Brian Epstein pointed out after John Lennon, you're actually one of the heartthrobs of the world.
Yeah.
So, having been told that, Lennon decided to go and test the mettle of the female population of the world when they were on tour and all that kind of stuff, and found that Brian Epstein was right. Yeah. So he had no interest left in Cynthia. But, of course, another innocent
It's a bit
victim.
like One Direction being suddenly one of the One Direction guys getting married, isn't it? And everyone going, suddenly he's off the market. You know?
Yeah, he's absolutely right, yeah. And then, of course, the innocent victim of all this was Julian Lennon. Paul McCartney famously wrote the song.
Was at his mother's bedside when she died?
He was at his mother's bedside when he died, yeah. And he's a forgotten man now as well, because the second child of John Lennon was what's his name, Sean, who was son by Yoko Ono, who's still alive at the age of 85
she is,
or something, 86, and who looks very much like John Lennon, as does Julian. But because Sean remained in touch with his mother, Yoko, all his life, he was treated far better. There was a fantastic book I read on John Lennon, how he literally took 3 years off and locked himself up in the Dakota building in New York, which you and I know so well, baked bread and brought up his son Sean. Well, whereas Julian, he hardly ever saw.
Well, exactly.
He hardly ever saw him.
Exactly. And I mean, there's a picture of them in the paper here from 1965 where John Lennon looks very fresh-faced. Julian sitting on Cynthia's knee looks very kind of much like a toddler.
Bemused.
And it's a beautiful family picture. However, this is, they say, just before he kind of got himself into drugs.
Yes, that's right.
And his kind of descent into slight period of debauchery happened. But the thing that gets me, right, is that you, as I say, have painted this guy as a guy who has not only been one of the world's greatest songwriters, a guy who brought down the Berlin Wall.
Yes.
I mean, you literally hero worship this guy.
I do.
But in none of that hero worship do you give any kind of credence to all these stories which paint him as a horrible man. But you went on about George Best the other day and what Callum Best had said about him and what a terrible thing it was to have him as his father. How can you not do the same for John Lennon? He was obviously a terrible father.
He was a terrible father, but I'm not interested in his powers and his abilities as a father. No, I've got double standards.
Yeah, you have.
No, John Lennon's contribution to the...
So he can do anything he likes?
Yes, he can.
Really?
John Lennon's contribution to the world, and the world as it is today, is so immense.
Yeah.
Lennon contributed more to the world than any other living human being.
Rubbish.
Since the year...
Rubbish.
No, since 1066.
Nonsense.
Without a shadow of a doubt he did. Believe me, you just don't know. You've never appreciated Mike.
Listen, I've always liked John Lennon's music.
He stopped the Vietnam War.
No, he did
got
not
rid of
stop
communism.
the Vietnam War. No, he did not.
He brought down the Berlin Wall.
No, he didn't.
He did.
No, he didn't.
He got rid of Richard Nixon as,
Rubbish.
a corrupt...
I think that was Watergate, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you have to do with Watergate?
What do you think they were doing in Watergate? They were trying to find secrets out in their enemies and all this kind of thing.
They were bugging the Democratic National Congress.
I know they
office.
were. But you know as well as I do that Richard Nixon set the CIA and the FBI on the trail of John Lennon, wanted him thrown out of America.
John Lennon didn't bring down the president.
He did.
No,
he did
you
because
are deluded.
he refused to go. He refused to leave America
deluded.
because he was trying to stop the Vietnam War, and the youth of America was behind John Lennon. But anyway, we all know the story about Paul McCartney driving over to the home in Surrey when John Lennon had gone off somewhere and fled. Paul McCartney very kindly went over to sort of, try and see if Cynthia was all right, and thought about, their son Julian on the way. Came up with humming the Hey Jules ditty in his head.
Which became Hey Jude, right?
Became Hey Jude, exactly. And there we are. The rest is spectacular history.
I just want you to recognise that the man that you believe to be the great saviour of Western democracy and life in general and everything else, was a very flawed character. I want you to admit that he was a terrible father and that he had the morals of an alley cat.
I admit that.
And that he's the morals of an alley cat. So how on earth you could ever now criticise anything that I do?
No.
Because he is a guy that you hero worship.
Hang on,
you've completely overlooked that.
But your contribution to the world is zilch. Your contribution to the world,
That's not the point.
You could literally is a grain of sand on Bournemouth Beach. John Lennon's contribution to the world.
Head first
John Lennon's contribution to the world is that he actually made the world.
But
in my view, he almost made the world.
Do you not even see the double standards that you're operating?
No, I don't see any double standards at all. You are insignificant. You're a creep, and I care little I care little for your cultural contribution to the world because you haven't made any. John Lennon shaped the whole of the second half of the 20th century, and that's why the world is as it is today. John Lennon...
Thank God nobody's ever asked you to actually be a proper sort of diarist of the modern world,
John
like Samuel
Lennon
Pepys.
Changed the world from being in black and white to being in colour.
Really?
It was like one moment you're sitting in your lounge and you're watching a an 18-inch square goggle box, which is a black and white TV, and all of a sudden somebody comes and waves a magic wand, and that television becomes a 40-inch television in colour. That's what Lennon did to the world. And for that reason, I forgive him everything.
Wheeled into the bathroom on a trolley.
Yes, that's right. I forgive him everything because of the huge talent he used to make all our lives better, richer, and more fulfilling.
Unbelievable. Here's this one from Roy, who gets it. He says, two mics, so John Lennon wasn't God, he was just a fallible human being with a huge sexual appetite. Porky just has a huge appetite.
Oh, that's very nice, isn't it?
You're just having some tea there, by the way.
Sorry?
You're just having some tea there.
What have you done to my tea?
I've done anything to it.
What have you done to my tea?
I've done nothing to your tea.
Where's my producer?
I've done nothing to it.
They've gone. There's nobody in there.
Yeah, I know.
Why have they fled?
I don't know.
I'm not drinking this tea.
I've not done anything to it. I'm going to torment you now, because every time you take a sip of tea, you're going to think there's something in it.
I'm taking this tea home, and I mean this. I'm going to get it analysed, and if you've put any nefarious substances in my tea...
No, I haven't.
Which could possibly warp my brain or anything like that. I could be seeing psychedelic shapes by the time we finish the show tonight. It could be down to you.
Yeah, it could well be. You'll just have to think about that every single time you drink anything.
Something like lysergic acid diethylamide in my tea.
Anything you imbibe from this moment on in your life might be something terrible, right? But you never know.
You're a scumbag.
I'm just going to drive you mad.
Scumbag.
I'm going to drive you mad.
It's only a little joke. You just couldn't take it.
This is Talk Sport.
The thousands of people who've seen the clip on video, they know what a mug you are now.
Yeah, well, you've already had one sip of tea, so we'll see where it all goes from here. This is Talk Sport.
Please tell me this is not a dream. This is the greatest game in the world. Oh, he's got to bend his line to stay onside. He's done it, and it's played. Rooney in with a wonderful roll. Wonderful reverse pass, and Wayne Rooney scores yet again. 4 goals in 2 games. England are in the quarterfinals. Are we going to have a good tournament? Better believe it.
This is Talk Sport, extra time with the two mics. He's Mike Parry, I'm Mike Graham. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on, of course. There are some rather interesting videos, along with that terrible, dastardly prank that you pulled on me yesterday on the two mics on YouTube.
It was so funny. Look at it, people. Just go to Two Mics TV on YouTube, and you will giggle your heads off.
After I calmed down a bit, I did find it quite funny, but not yesterday. Yesterday was not funny at all, but you will be getting your recompense for it. A few people pointing out your delusion. Here's one from Don, who says, Porky's totally deluded if he thinks John Lennon is the most important person of the century. I can hear the men in the white coats coming.
No.
And here's one from JPK, who says, back to normal, John Lennon did more for anyone since 1066. And then he says on Twitter, 140 characters is just not enough for an adequate rebuttal.
Yeah, well, you can have your rebuttal as much as you like. The problem is, I'm amazed that other people cannot see the visionary that John Lennon was, how he changed the world. He said if we all thought about having a new TV and wanted a new TV, we'd all get new TVs, we wouldn't be going to war with each other. This man knew exactly about human behaviour. He was almost like messianical. Is that the word?
Messianic.
Messianic, that's right, messianic.
Well, only to people like you.
No.
Who are just maniacs.
To millions. But anyway, look, enough of that. We just played that bit of music there because we should be aware of the fact that on June the 7th, 2 important things are going to happen.
Yes.
One of them is an England game in Ireland. The other one, which we'll be telling you more about over the next 2 or 3 days, folks, is that the two mics will be playing a major theatre in the West End of London that night. Well, not playing, it'll be a show. We're not playing any instruments.
No, well, I don't know. You might bring one along.
Yeah, I might bring my recorder, but no, we've
bring your harmonica or something.
That's right. It's our breakthrough.
I could dust off my violin from the old days.
Yeah, good idea. It's our breakthrough into the West End. We'll tell you a lot more about that in the near future.
Yes,
looking forward to being.
But funnily enough, because of the link with which you have with the FA and also with the Irish game, because it was you who was left behind, was it not, by the FA to try and sort out that terrible mess in Ireland.
Yeah.
Not the last time they played in Dublin, but one of the times they played in Dublin.
No, it is the last time they played in Dublin. This is the first game in Dublin since then.
Is it really?
Oh, it's an amazing night.
That was a long time ago, though, wasn't it?
It was 1994.
Yeah.
And, was it February 95? I think it was February 95.
20 years ago, anyway.
Yeah, 20 years ago. And I'll tell you exactly about the night. And the reason we're talking about this is because what the FA is saying now is they want to be, absolutely on top of containing any England fans who go over there, don't want any repetition of what happened for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And the thing they most...
And they're worried about this IRA song,
Exactly.
Right?
The thing they most fear is the repulsive chanting about IRA connections and all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't think that'll happen for 2 reasons, right? When it happened in 95... One of the reasons it happened was there were no restrictions on football fans travelling. Yeah. So all these scumbags...
Sort of known hooligans, as it were.
Known hooligan scumbags who thought it would be great to have a punch-up in Ireland. We can use the IRA song as a peg, as an excuse to go and taunt them. They didn't really understand the politics at all. They didn't realise that actually the war between the British Army and the IRA was going on in Belfast and not in Ireland. But anyway, that's by the by. So they go over there. So they won't be going because we know they are, and they're not allowed to travel with England anyway. Secondly...
And they won't be able to get tickets, presumably.
Won't be able to get tickets, and England will be watching them. But secondly, Lansdowne Road, the ground where it's played in those days, was, and you can ask Andy Townsend this, Andy Townsend was captain of Ireland around that time, OK? It was probably the worst football stadium in the British Isles. It was a complete wreck, falling to pieces. And so it was
it was more of a wreck after England played there as well, wasn't it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They go hand in hand. It was easy for the England fans to pull up the chairs out of the stand, pull up the benches, because whole benches were chucked out of the stand onto the pitch and onto the people below them. And that can't happen because now it's a magnificent stadium. It's been rebuilt. If it's played there, or is it played at Croke Park?
I think it will be somewhere else.
I think it's Lansdowne Road. But anyway, the point is, the stadium has been renovated. And the third issue is that, fortunately, over the last 20 years, there's been a massive re-education programme in the way we run our football matches, where we contain them, security, stewarding, and all that. So it won't happen.
Well, they say that, except the reason that some of these stories are now on the back pages is that, looking at the game against Italy, there were moments where people who were observing said they heard some of this chanting going on. Now, funnily enough, I don't know if you heard last night, I had a guy on from Turin, one of the England fans, who was there. And I didn't mean to put the guy on the spot, but I did in the end, because on his Twitter feed, which is what he used to get in touch with us in the first place, he was posting loads of videos of the fans singing. And they were singing, the one song that I saw them singing was, Where Were You in World War II, to the Italians, which, it's just needless to me.
Of course it is.
Why on earth would they sing something like that? And when I asked him whether he was singing it, he kind of stumbled around and went, I wasn't really singing it. But, whether he was or not, the point is there are still fans who sing these kinds of songs.
Well, there are, but I've been to a lot of away England games, Mike. I mean, for about 3 or 4 years, I didn't miss an away game in England. I was mostly doing it with Talk Sport, but if I wasn't going with Talk Sport, I'd go on my own. Not my own, I'd go with a group of people just to follow England. And I didn't see any of that behaviour. And I have to say...
do you think it's coming back, though?
Well, I hope not, but you see, most England fans who travel abroad are not from one of the bigger clubs where all the... what's the word I'm looking for? All the worst sort of passions of football fans seem to be concentrated.
Well, I don't know. I suppose you'd get an argument from either side there, wouldn't you?
But what I'm saying is...
Because you'd get the smaller league... A lot of the smaller league clubs who say, our fans are actually more passionate about England than Premier League fans are, because they want
they are. But what I'm saying is, fans of, Port Vale, Bristol City, Rochdale, Halifax, Milton Keynes don't tend on a week-to-week basis to have songs about the IRA on their hymn sheet at their home grounds or their away grounds.
But we do know as well, without getting too serious here, that there are problems of racism and all sorts of other things that happen at lower league level as much as it happens at Premier League level. We had the incident on the trains with Chelsea over in Paris. There seems to me to be a bit of a resurgence of that kind of stuff.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because actually I was going to tell you about this new report I've come across, and it's another resurgence of stuff. Listen to this one here. This is an exclusive report written by a mate of mine who's a crime investigator. The British football clubs,
mate of yours?
Yeah, the British football clubs with the worst train yobs are named in a report today. Premier hooligans, Manchester United are at the top, then Manchester City, Sunderland, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Chelsea, Stoke City, Everton, my club, Arsenal and Tottenham. And the Championship teams, because you mentioned the low league clubs, Leeds United, Birmingham, Forest, Wolves, Sheffield Wednesday, Wigan, Derby, Millwall, Blackburn and Blackpool. And it says Leeds fans top the table for violence and mayhem on the railways. Birmingham City, Manchester United, Rangers and Nottingham Forest louts complete the top 5. Figures from a new British Transport Police unit. It's an official report, this, OK. British Transport Police, the official police force of the railways. So this is
based on them, policing the railways, basically, seeing all this stuff.
I was about to say, the British Transport Police unit reveals there were 1,027 disturbances involving football fans on trains during seasons 2012-13 and 2013-14. Thugs from Leeds Service Crew were responsible for the most incidents, 77.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. And I mean, when the Chelsea incident happened, lots of people, I think, in the world of football were kind of, shocked that this was still going on.
Definitely.
And I don't know why they were shocked, because you know, you've been to plenty of football matches over the years, as I have. You've been to more than I have.
No, you haven't been to plenty.
I've been to plenty. Trust me.
You've been to very few.
I've been to plenty.
Very few.
I've seen plenty of things at football matches which
I
frankly...
bet you've been to no more than 3% of the games I've been to in your lifetime.
Well, it's not a competition, is it?
Well, it's not a competition, but I just don't like you trying to compare yourself to me.
I'm not comparing
in terms
myself
of
to you.
Experience, knowledge, and authority on visiting football grounds and matches. Okay.
All right. Well, I would never ever consider myself anywhere close to visiting the number of football grounds that you have. The trouble is, you can't remember most of the football grounds you go to because by the time you're leaving them, you've already been filled with the hospitality of whoever happens to have been stupid enough to invite you there to have a nice day out.
You see, you can't concede any fact about me being better than you without tainting it with some heinous blinking accusation.
Heinous, actually.
Yeah, heinous accusation.
Hasn't got a second eye.
It's all you can do, you know.
I'm surprised you haven't been involved in some of these incidents. But you see, here I'm trying to have
unless somebody's had a go at me.
Well, you were having a go at Virgin Trains for banning booze the other day, weren't you?
Yes,
stopping Everton fans from having a drink. And now you've got the evidence that shows why they have to do it.
I'll tell you about trains in a minute. We must get back to Ireland for a sec. We mustn't lose that because I was at that game that night. It was shocking.
Yeah.
And what happened was, of course, the fans then ran riot around the city.
The great thing about that night was that you were left behind as the sole representative of the FA.
I was.
Because they clearly thought we're all going to scarper and leave you holding the baby.
They did.
Which is a disgraceful way to behave.
The game was abandoned halfway through the first half, right, because there was so much debris on the pitch you couldn't play it on.
Yeah.
I went down into the tunnel. Terry Venables, the England manager, Jack Charlton, the Ireland manager, and Jack Charlton was absolutely angry. He was steaming up and down the players' tunnel, and he was saying, let's get this game back on. And he said to Terry, come on, let's get out there. And Terry was just a bit more pragmatic, really, and said, we can't, Jack. There's nothing we can do. We can't get out there. We can't put the boys out there again. The people are going to throw stuff on the pitch. So what happened was, the England team were told to get changed, straight to the airport, got on the plane. I was told to stay behind, apologise to the Irish people on television, which I had to do.
Did you have to do that?
Yeah.
Have you got a clip of that? That must be on YouTube somewhere.
Must be on RTE somewhere.
I'd love to find that.
And on
what did you say?
I said on behalf of the Football Association and the people of the rest of the United Kingdom, I want to apologise for the behaviour of a very small minority of fans who've come here tonight.
Who've come and wrecked your stadium.
And desecrated your stadium and your city. And it's obviously something which we will be investigating.
And did they take your grovelling apology with the true sincerity that it was meant?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then, what happened then was...
after the time, by the way.
Yeah, hang on, don't worry about the time. And then, after doing all that and actually getting stuck into repairing...
Well, they hung you out to dry, the FA, didn't they?
Well, I volunteered to do it. I said, I'll sort it out, don't worry. I know the Irish well, because I'd spent a lot of time in Ireland working for the Daily Express.
Yes,
so
in Belfast.
I said, I'm
not in Dublin.
I'm both, actually. I said, I'm an expert in Anglo-Irish relations.
Really?
Leave it to me, I'll sort it out. I know people in government and all that kind of stuff. So I did all... What
well, they believed that, did they?
Well, it's true. It's true.
Right.
So,
the Taoiseach.
So I did all that. Yeah, the Taoiseach. I then go back to the hotel, which is the 5-star hotel I was staying in. Yeah. It was crowded in the bar. So myself and what's the name of I don't know. My friend at the Daily Mail. He's dead now, unfortunately. Died of cancer, unfortunately, but he was live that night.
Who?
Ted Oliver.
Oh, Ted Oliver.
Who was an Irishman himself.
So you were hanging around with Fleet Street hacks?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, of course I was.
So giving them all your stories?
Yeah, of course I was,
Of course,
yeah. So we got into the bar of the 5-star hotel. It's crowded. So we said, look, there's a dining room over there. Let's go in there. Yeah. It's quieter. And we said to the maitre d', we're big shots. I'm from the FA.
Maitre d'?
Yeah, that's right, the maitre d'. And,
was that where Vinnie Jones bit his nose off?
Well, this is exactly what happened. We're sitting there when Vinnie Jones comes in with a crowd of people showing off and doing the big guy and all that. Comes over to Ted and says, how are you? Leans forward and clamps his teeth around his nose and bites Ted on the nose. It was such a shock. We didn't know what to do. Yeah. But that, that went all over the papers the next morning, in addition to this disgraceful scene.
In some ways, actually, it helped you out because it took away some of the heat.
It took away some of the heat. But again, then I had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because Vinnie Jones, of course, was a recent retired English footballer, a member of the PFA, a representative of the English Football Leagues. Yeah. I had to deal with his atrocious behaviour, the atrocious behaviour of football fans, the anger of Mrs Thatcher and her government upon the FA for allowing those people to go, I had to stand up to the Home Secretary and tell him that I would sort the problem. Don't worry, we will not fracture English-Irish relationships.
Who was the Home Secretary then?
The Home Secretary, I think, might have been Willie Whitelaw in those days. Right. No, hang on. No, it wasn't.
It wasn't that long ago.
No, hang on.
You said it was 1995.
No, hang on. It wasn't Mrs Thatcher I stood up to. No, it was John Major. It was John Major. That's right. It's John Major.
He's a tough guy.
Yeah, and the Foreign Secretary was Malcolm Rifkind, I think.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much indeed for that.
Anyway, I'd let you know. Just so I'd let you know.
Thank you. We'll get back
to you. But I did stand up to Mrs Thatcher on another occasion.
Yeah, I'm sure you did, yeah.
At the Brighton conference.
Would you stop talking for a second? The time is getting on. Okay. Kevin Liverpool puts it rather well. He says, no surrender to the IRA was sung at a time before we actually did surrender to them. It no longer has any relevance. Which I think is rather good. This is Talk Sport.
On digital radio and 1089 and 1053 AM. Talk Sport.
I'm Papa the Sailor Man. I'm Papa the Sailor Man. Pluto, come here, Pluto. I'm going to whip your ass and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Papa the Sailor Man. Yeah. You always beat Pluto in the end, didn't
By the way, it's isn't it Pluto?
Pluto.
It's not Pluto. Pluto was a dog.
Yeah, that's right, it was, yeah.
Now, that was yesterday.
Right.
You managed to get Pluto confused with
Pluto, yeah.
Which is easily done, I suppose.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Now, I'll tell you what, a lot of people have been taking great interest in on Twitter.
Oh, yes.
Is our suggestion last night that we should have some kind of cook-off. Because you know, people want to watch you. I know you're going to struggle to find somebody to video it for
I am,
you.
yeah.
But we can figure that out later. But there's loads and loads of people saying it's got to be done. There's even a chef who's offering to actually teach you how to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
But the thing
been a
is,
chef for 20 years.
Although I'm not a chef, I do take pride in my culinary
well, you told
skills.
us about how expert you are at taking a pizza out of the freezer and putting it in the oven and heating it up.
I don't like to have somebody in my kitchen. Most top chefs don't like people in their kitchen.
In your apartment?
Well, no, I don't really. Particularly if they've got the shoes on.
Yeah.
They take the shoes off. I don't mind occasionally. Provided they've got clean, fresh socks on, that sort of stuff. Oh, by the way, war on my cleaners.
You actually ask them if they've got clean, fresh socks on.
Well, I like them to. I've had a bit of a war with the cleaners at the Penthouse in Stockbroker Mills. Yeah. I was convinced, right, now we pay a lot of service charges there. I mean, huge service charges, right? And we have a cleaning company that come in once a week to do the...
What, the communal areas?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the carpets in the corridors. Yeah, that's right. And the stairs and all this kind of stuff,
I always hoover at the wrong time when I'm asleep.
And you can always hear the hoover banging on the rails of the stairs and all that. Now then...
And the bars are presumably of your front door.
I haven't got any bars. Do you mean my gate?
The prison bars on your front door?
No, my gate. My gate.
It's the prison bars.
Now, how about this? I was convinced... I mean, although we work strange hours and all that, and I'm on a mission, I was convinced that these guys were coming around on either a Tuesday or a Wednesday, doing every floor except mine, because they found it too much effort to get up the stairs to do mine. Because you come out the lift and then you've got a flight of stairs to mine. It's the only apartment.
The penthouse.
Exactly. It's the only
apart
apartment.
From the guy opposite you.
Well, there's a lady opposite, actually. But
I thought it was a guy. You said you went to see him once to show him how easy it was for somebody to break in, didn't you?
That's when he used to live there, but that was some years ago.
Oh, he moved away after that?
Yeah, he's moved away.
Funny thing.
Yeah, he's moved away. Yeah.
And of course he moved away.
A very nice lady who lives opposite.
So what is she like then?
Oh, she's very nice.
Yeah, what sort of age?
I don't know, because I don't ask women their ages.
Well, what would you hazard a guess at?
She's middle-aged, you know, and it'd be very nice, very pleasant.
Sort of first Mrs. Parry type?
No, very pleasant neighbour. And she's very interested in horse racing. She's got a horse stable.
I can't believe you haven't at one point promised to take her to Cheltenham in a helicopter.
I did, actually.
Yeah.
But we never got round to it. But anyway, that's probably after a few. But she sometimes comes over and watches the Grand National or the Cheltenham Gold Cup.
What, in your place?
Something like Yes.
Really?
Yes, because she likes a bet as well. I like a flutter.
That could go horribly wrong, you know.
No.
Yeah, it could.
No, why?
You
How?
invite a woman into your house to watch the racing.
Well, she's my neighbour. It's no problem.
Too much drink gets taken. You know, some kind of incident happens.
No.
Police get called. What if she's not wearing clean socks? I mean, anything could go wrong.
No, well, she knows the rules.
Why don't you make her a meal then?
No. She knows the rules because we share the same cleaner.
Okay.
So my housekeeper, I allow her to clean
that's not
the
good.
I'll tell you why that's not good.
The apartment
of my neighbour opposite.
But I'll tell you why that's not good, because your housekeeper will be telling her stuff about you.
No, she won't. No,
she
no,
will.
No,
because the women will have a kind of a common bond.
No.
And if she asks the housekeeper a question, she won't be able to refuse to answer it.
No.
I guarantee you.
No. Well, I mean, if you put those sort of doubts into my mind, I might have to get rid of my housekeeper. So
well, you might have to.
You might have cost her a job if.
Well, how's that my fault?
Well, if I find any evidence of this, then there's going to be a problem. But anyway, I'm telling you the reason I started on this subject.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to it.
I was convinced these lazy gits, the cleaners.
What, you mean the people that clean your property for you?
Yeah.
That's no way to refer to it.
We're not getting right up to the top of the stairs and into the corridor in front of my house. So what I did was last week, right, I went out and bought a tin of talcum powder. Okay. What are you laughing at? What's that? You choked on your tea, and you said there's something wrong with my tea.
I know.
Yours.
There's nothing wrong with your tea.
Good. No, there isn't. No. So I went and got a little tin of talcum powder, and I sprayed talcum powder on the floor. Just past my door, okay. You see what I mean? Towards the end of the corridor.
That's like that trick they used to do in all the old movies of putting a hair across the door so if anybody would break it in.
Yeah. So and it wasn't too obvious and all that kind of stuff. So I told the neighbour opposite, I said, don't worry about the talcum powder. I said, it's a test for the cleaners.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was there for a week.
Really?
Yeah.
So they didn't hoover it up then?
Well, you see, they claim that
if it was very close to the skirting board, they maybe didn't have the right.
No. I put it
device.
right in the middle of the floor.
Oh, did you?
But anyway, what happened was this morning I caught them out because I heard the noise downstairs. So
I'm sorry. So this is in between you spying on the old bin men to make sure they're emptying the bins properly.
Yes.
You managed to find time to set up the cleaners.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, I pay huge service charges and I want the job done properly. Yeah. So I went down today and I said hello, to the guy holding the Hoover.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, hello, sir. I said, you are going."
Just imagine the scene.
Hang on. I said,
poor guy.
You are going upstairs, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I said, and do you all go upstairs? Yes, sir. I said, are you sure? Yes, sir. I said, you didn't go upstairs last week.
Yeah.
What, sir? I said, you didn't hoover up my talcum powder on my floor. Look, come with me. So I got hold of his Hoover thing. And
is it on wheels? Is it like one of those Henry
Yeah,
ones?
That's right. Yeah. But it's got a very, very long nozzle type thing, Right. So I came up and I said, look at that. I said, you didn't hoover that up last week. Why not? What the? Anyway, apparently they came on Monday of last week. And they came on Wednesday this week. And I said, that's not... Because I did put
So when did you put the talcum down?
On the Tuesday last week, because I thought they were coming on the Wednesday.
So you just missed them then?
Yeah, so he said, we came on Wednesday last week. And I said, it came on Monday last week. I said, why? He said, because of Easter. I said, what's that got to do with it? He said,
well, Easter's this week, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but he said that they came early last week and later this week because they're not coming next week on Monday because it's Easter Monday.
Of course, it's Easter Monday.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, he must have been horrified that you were trying to stitch him up like that.
Well, I just wanted answers, straight answers, that's all. So anyway, I sort of gave him the benefit of the doubt and gave him £10.
Okay.
And said, well, just keep doing a good job on my floor, please. Don't worry about the rest.
I suppose on the plus side, he'll always now come and hoover up the whatever is
going
on.
Well, he will. I mean, I've rattled his cage, that's the point. He won't mess with the Portmeister anytime soon.
Unbelievable. Have you got better things to do?
No, it's not unbelievable. I mean, the thing is, mate, if it happened to you, you'd just shrug your shoulders and say, all right, well, I'm paying for service charges, but they're not hoovering my carpet.
I don't pay for the service charges.
No, I know you don't, because you don't own your property.
No, because I rent it. Yeah, that's right. That makes me smart.
No, it doesn't. It makes you really, it makes you the flotsam in the housing chain rather than the foundations of it.
Well, let's see. We'll see what happens when the interest rates go up and you find yourself not being able to afford a mortgage.
What?
Now, let me read you a couple of
tweets. Mortgages.
You've got no mortgages?
No, I haven't got any mortgages.
Really?
No,
you shouldn't give that sort of information away.
Why not?
Well, because it makes you sound as if you're a very wealthy person.
No, I'm not. No.
If you've got no mortgages, you're in pretty good shape.
No, well, look, everybody invests their money in, various ways, and I just chose to go into bricks and mortar to some extent. But, I mean, I'm not a wealthy man. I'm not.
Here's one from
Becky.
Becky.
I wish I was wealthy. What about the couple who've just won the lottery again?
Well, I tell you what, that is an incredible story. 283 billion to one that they would win another ticket, right? And it's a Euro Millions kind of raffle ticket type thing. It's not the National Lottery.
No, I know what it is.
Yeah.
You buy a Euro ticket
you still buy a lottery ticket, don't
I
you?
do, yeah, every week, yeah.
Why?
Well, I'll tell you in a minute. You buy a Euro ticket, right? Yeah. And I think they're on Tuesdays and Fridays, and the other ones...
I've no idea.
Yeah,
I don't buy
think it's Tuesdays and Fridays.
I don't buy them.
And first of all, you find out, do your numbers come up? But if your numbers don't come up, then there's like...
And what is it, 6 numbers you have to get?
Well, it's complicated. limited. You've got numbers, and then you've got 2-star numbers.
I didn't mind it when it was the normal. When the National Lottery started, and they had one draw, and you could either buy a ticket for that or not.
But that
was
runs,
fine.
This runs alongside.
No, I know it does, but it's too much of it now.
But what I was going to say is, then you get a list of numbers on the bottom for as you quite rightly say, it's a raffle, and there's like 100 prizes of £20,000 or something like that. Well, they won £1 million in that raffle.
Right.
Twice in 2 years.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, the Sun's got a front page this morning saying that the odds of them winning that are actually longer than the odds of meeting Elvis Presley in Tesco's, which is 280 billion to 1.
And this is 282 billion to 1, isn't it? Yeah. But I tell you what, when you say, do I buy a lottery ticket, I buy £10 of lottery tickets every week, and I know I will win the lottery. I've worked it out.
Well, because this guy has said today that there are a couple from Huddersfield, I think, or Scunthorpe rather. He said that he was telling all his friends, he said, we're going to win it again. Right. I don't know how he knew that.
OK, well, I know I'm going to win it because I've been buying it since it started in 1995.
Well,
£10 a week.
Well, so have a lot of people.
It does. About 8 times I've had 4 numbers.
Yeah.
And once I had 5 numbers.
Yeah, but that's the way the system works.
Guess how much I got for 5 numbers?
No, I don't know, 60 quid?
No, £1,600.
Oh, really?
You get 75.
When did you get that then? When did you win that?
Oh, about 4 or 5 years ago.
I don't remember you telling me.
I probably didn't want to tell you in case you thought that I should take you out and buy you
I'll tell you what I do remember.
Booze.
It's when we were doing a mid-morning show. You once won some money on a ticket that I gave you the money to buy.
No, rubbish.
You did.
Rubbish.
You did. You won a couple hundred quid, and I was demanding that I should get about half of it, and you refused to pay me. And you said you gave me back the couple of quid that I loaned you, but you wouldn't pay me the rest.
This is absolute nonsense.
It's
and
not
garbage.
nonsense. I'll find you the audio.
But I am convinced, absolutely convinced, that if I keep buying at the rate of £10 a week, I will eventually win the lottery.
Well, there was a guy. Was there not a guy who did the old, the mathematical equation? I think he was a scientist in either the United States or Japan or somewhere, and he worked out exactly how to
buy
do it.
Every ticket in the lottery 1 week. He did, and he made a profit of about $2.7 million.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That's right. That's right, you did, yeah.
So you've got to raise that kind of money first.
Well, that's right. I think he bought £7 million worth of lottery tickets.
But he didn't have to buy them all. He worked it out in some way.
He did, yeah, he did. And he won $2.7 million. Yeah. So he won, in fact, $9.7 million, $2.7 million profit. Yeah. So we should perhaps work on that one.
Well, we should. There's a lot of money to raise, though. Here's one from Becky who says, Porky went on Irish TV to apologise. He has the perfect face for radio. No doubt a few pints of the black stuff helped. And here's one from B Champions who says, I bet the Irish were delighted to be told that they're part of the rest of the United Kingdom. No wonder Porky only gets 3 in the quiz.
No, I apologised from the people of the rest of the United Kingdom.
Oh, I see.
Wash your ears out, please.
Oh, right, OK. And here's one from Paul who says, no need to worry about Parry's neighbour. He's clearly in love with John Lennon. Of course, what to do, you can tweet us at the 2 mics, of course, and you can follow us there, and you'll get all the latest news from the live shows and, of course, the podcasts that are coming out every time we do a show, 4 shows a week, of course. A couple of great stories I want to mention to you.
Have I shown you that book, by the way?
Oh, have you got Cynthia Lennon's book?
Yeah.
That looks like a very old book.
I bought it when it was published in 1976. It's 40 years old.
Blimey.
It's called Cynthia Lennon.
How much did it cost then?
How much did it cost? It cost 75p.
75p?
UK 75p.
Isn't that amazing?
Australia $2.65. Canada,
I don't need to know how much it costs in other countries of the world.
But I mean,
was just interested in the inflationary situation.
I know, it's a slim volume.
Have you actually read it?
Of course I read. I read it 2 or 3 times when I was a teenager.
Did you?
And there's the earliest picture of John Lennon, see?
Blimey.
With his jumper on, like
you can
you've got a
recognise
jumper
it,
on.
can't you?
Of course you can, yeah.
School picture.
But I just thought I'd let you know that because it really was an incredible era and all that kind of stuff. Poor old Cynthia Lennon.
Is that what most of your books are like then? They're all ancient, are they? And all kind of dog-eared?
No. Haven't you got a collection of books at home? What do you have in your library?
I've got loads of books. I've got quite a lot of philosophy books.
Yeah, I haven't got any books
I've got quite a few cookery books.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of political books.
I don't need cookery books, mate.
I've got a couple of Christopher Hitchens books, who I like.
Christopher Hitchens, he's dead.
So Cynthia Lennon.
He was a friend of mine, actually, in Washington, D.C.
Oh, was he?
Yeah,
when he was a friend of yours.
When I was the political correspondent in America for the Daily Express, he was one of the gang. What are you laughing
political correspondent. That was not your title.
Sorry, what else do you think I was doing in Washington, D.C.?
You were called a US editor or something.
I was US editor. Yeah, that included masterminding the political coverage of 2 American elections.
I'm sure Mr. Hitchens must have been very, very much in awe of you.
He was.
Now, a couple of things I want to bring to your attention that I spotted. I tweeted these out a little bit earlier in the day.
Okay.
Now, you've said to me that there's some things that you've sometimes found in your food cupboards which are a little older than they should be, right?
Well, I throw them away.
I want to give you a warning.
Or give them away to somebody.
That was in from Italy, actually.
Right.
It was in the Evening Standard a little bit earlier in the day. And it was a grandmother who accidentally poisoned her entire family after serving hot chocolate, which went out of date 25 years ago.
Good God.
And you wouldn't think that could happen, would you?
I had hot chocolate in the place down on the coast.
Oh, yeah.
And funny enough, one night I thought, I think I'll have hot chocolate.
Well, this is what I thought of you, because I thought you told the story that it was quite old, because sometimes you do find things in your cupboard that are old. Yeah.
Now, I took it out of the cupboard and I thought, well, nothing can happen to chocolate. And I put it in the old cup and I boiled the kettle and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, it was like one of those films starring Boris Karloff.
Oh, yeah.
It just bubbled up.
Well, just foamed.
Foamed. It foamed, but I thought, this is clearly something wrong here. So how she didn't notice something was wrong, I don't know, because I did exactly the same thing. If I'd have had it and it was still sealed, you never know, might have been okay or something, but it hadn't. It'd been open.
But some people are like that. I mean, you go to sometimes I go to my sister's house in Connecticut, and she's got a bit more kind of conscious of it now, but there was a time whenever I went there that I would just like clear out her fridge, because she would have things like mayonnaise and jars of olives and, bits of salsa that she'd had. Exactly. And some of them were like years and years old. And I'd be like, what are you doing with this stuff? Just get rid of it. Dangerous.
I've got, because I like to keep myself healthy, I always cook in sunflower oil, okay?
Do you?
And I bought this huge, you
should use olive oil, it's more healthy than sunflower oil.
No, it's just sunflower oil. And this huge plastic container, which I still have on the coast, which I still use, is 7 years old.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't sound right to me.
No, it's not.
I don't think you should use 7-year-old oil.
No, there's absolutely no problem with it.
Really?
No,
sure?
I've spoken to experts. In fact, you could use it in 100...
sunflower seed experts.
Yeah. You could use it in 100 years' time. It really doesn't matter. No, you could.
Wow.
You could. I mean, for instance, that when you buy a tin of beans or a tin of corned beef or something like that, it says it's got date.
I don't buy tins of corned
usually
beef.
For about 2 years or something like that. In fact, during the war, and remember the war happened like 70 years ago, they used to have bully beef and stuff like that, which was opened in the 1960s and still given out as rationing to troops.
Yeah.
You can, in fact, keep stuff in cans for 25, 30, 40 years.
No problem at all. That's what your house is full of, I can imagine.
It's not. No,
I think I get a vision that your house is full of stuff that's 40 years old. You've got a lot of books from 40 years ago.
Utterly untrue. My house is a very, very modern house. It's got lots of modern stuff in it.
Has it?
Yeah, I always insist on having 3 cans
What's
of soup.
What's the most modern thing you've got? 3 cans of soup?
No, I always have 3 cans of soup.
What's your favourite flavour?
Well, I always have, make sure I have a choice in case I get hungry and want just soup and toast.
Right.
So I have pea and ham, tomato.
Pea and ham's nice. Tomato,
and oxtail.
Okay.
Very
good choices.
And I have those all the time.
So I prefer to make my own soup.
No, well, you see, you're mad. Because how long does that take to make soup?
Doesn't take any time at all.
It takes all the time in the world.
How
can you possibly make a pea and ham soup? You can't. Where do you get all the peas and ham from?
Well, you buy them.
No, they're ridiculous. You boil them up.
Ham hot from a butcher's.
So all you're eating then is a pea and ham stew. You're not eating soup.
No, but you know that.
Where do you get the liquid from in the soup?
It's water.
No, it's not water. That's you're telling fibs here.
How do you think you make soup then?
You make soup by.
What, you think you just pour soup into a pot and there it is?
No, you idiot. You put in all sorts of.
You make a vegetable soup?
Liquid enhancing properties.
Yeah, like water.
No, well, a little bit of water, a little bit, I granted, but not a lot.
Now, that's how you get the soup liquid.
No.
That's how it works.
No, what you need to do is like put tomatoes in it, because there's lots of water in tomatoes, and that turns into soup.
Yeah, but you
I know about that.
Especially put water in
I know about that.
You can put a bit of wine in as well if you wish, which is quite nice. Or cider, or beer.
Your obsession with drink doesn't interest me.
Now, here's another story that I thought you'd be interested in.
Right.
It's a headline in The Sun called Gary Bitter. Now, apparently, there are so few people now being called Gary.
Yes, I've seen that.
In the world, or in this country rather, that the name itself
only 27 last year or something.
Is headed for extinction. 28, yeah.
28,
and they're saying that it's all Gary Lineker's fault.
Yeah, why?
Because Gary Lineker
people don't want to be
called after Gary Lineker.
Because he's very uncool.
That's not true, is it? I think Gary Lineker's quite a cool guy.
Well, I suppose, you see, there's 2 Gary Linekers. This is the interesting thing about Gary Lineker.
Right.
There is the Gary Lineker who is, the very professional sports presenter, the chair of Match of the Day, all that kind of stuff.
Very smooth.
Very smooth and authoritative.
And he's very good at that.
Very good at it. Yeah. He's had years of practice. I remember him doing his first 1 or 2 shows. He looked very nervous, but we all doing a new job. But then the other Gary Lineker is his crisps advert. And have you seen the latest crisps advert?
Is that the one where he's lying in a hospital bed?
His children come in and kick the bed away or something. It snaps back and crushes him, and they nick all his crisps or something like that.
Well, I saw one, but I had the sound turned down because I was listening to some Jodie Mitchell. We'll talk about her a bit later on.
Right.
But it was
that one?
It was an advert, but he seems to be lying in a hospital bed or something.
That's the one. That's the one.
Oh, okay.
Now, and what I'm saying is, so he had the 2 personas. There's the clown, and there is the very serious going on. And in a way, I think we're a bit like that. You know, we can address serious subjects and talk about them authoritatively, but at the same time, we do realise that part of our role in life is to entertain.
Are you speaking for both of us now?
I'm speaking for both of us now.
This is now a worrying development. You know, not least am I concerned about your self-delusion. But if you're now going to decide that you're going to speak for both of us,
yes,
I think that's a very dangerous development.
No, it's not dangerous. What would you say? Would you say that you completely lack a sense of humour then?
No, but I wouldn't speak for you.
And can only address serious subjects because your brain isn't versatile enough to take in a slice of humour with a slice of sense.
No, I would say that that's true, but what I would not do is speak on your behalf.
Why
because
not?
I would think that was a bit presumptuous.
Yeah, well, it would be presumptuous for you to speak on my behalf, but it is not presumptuous for me, who is and I regard myself really as the sort of the elevated member of the...
I know you do.
No.
That's very clear.
I'm only being factual, to speak for both of us. I don't see a problem with that.
Do you think we should take...
And I'm sure the audience won't either.
Rather like we say that 1/3 of your heart works, do you think you should say that only 1/3 of me is part of the two mics and you're the other 2/3?
Not at all.
Is that what you're saying?
Not at all. I've always said in most circumstances it's a 50-50 relationship.
In most circumstances.
I don't have a problem there. Don't have a problem there at all. Right?
Is that it?
Yeah, well, no. I was trying to explain to you what I think the balance of contributory influences in the relationship. Okay. As simple as that.
Now, let me read you this from Georgie, who says, if Porky is a flutterer, he should be aware of the poor return of 5 numbers on the National Lottery. On the bookies' daily 49s lottery, you're paid £150,000 for getting 5 numbers correct for a £1 stake, half of what the National would cost him.
Yeah, but that's 5 out of 5, isn't it?
I guess it must be.
I got 5 out of 6. By the way, did you have any problem getting into work tonight because of extraordinary traffic problems in London for extraordinary reasons?
I didn't. But...
And, by the way, we're on the verge of Easter now, and the traffic jams apparently this bank holiday are going to be the most severe ever.
I was going to talk to you about that. We should do that in a bit because we're going to run out of time in a minute. But you're absolutely right. There was a horrendous fire in Holborn, which is not far from the offices here in sort of central London. And, I tell you what, I was a bit concerned about because I thought my daughter might have been stuck in it because she goes to college not very far from there. But it turned out she wasn't anywhere near it, fortunately. But yeah, I mean, there was kind of smoke, kind of flames coming out of the street.
You know what it is? It's exploding pavement syndrome.
It's underground wires going on fire, isn't it?
I tell you what it is. It's happening all over the country. And in fact, I remember trying to warn you about this a few weeks ago. I'd done some research on it because somebody had told me they got caught in it. Flying manholes, flames shooting up through grids and all this sort of thing.
Normally, though, isn't it?
No, I'll tell you exactly what it is. I'll tell you exactly what it is, you see, because I'm in touch with the modern world.
Yeah.
What's happened is we've got an ancient network of sewers, which we're spending billions on to replace.
I thought we'd replaced them all before the London 2012 Olympics, because Thames Water were working everywhere fixing those.
There's a huge ring underneath London, a huge circle thing, which is going to be the new, sort of sewerage system and all that kind of stuff. But the old ones are still creaking and cracking. And what's happening is, when they leak water, obviously, water pipes and sewage and that kind of stuff. But the whole world now, particularly in a modern city like London, is crisscrossed with literally millions of miles of cable for things like, cable television, internet, telephone lines, all that kind of stuff. And what happens is these leaking pipes drop water onto the cables, they burst into flames.
Surely the cables are insulated, aren't they?
Well, yes, they are, but they wear and tear like everything else, and you get rats that gnaw at the cables and take the plastic off and all that kind of stuff, so you're left with exposed copper and this sort of stuff. And when the water drips on them and the cables touch each other, they blow up, and it's happening all over the country. In fact...
It's a bit worrying, that, isn't it?
It's very worrying.
You're in time, by the way.
You're in very serious danger of being ignited
That's not true.
as a pedestrian on any street in this country. Now,
I don't think
on any street in this country.
I don't think so.
It is a major...
Look into the light.
It is a major concern.
You've gone mad.
Major concern. Utterly remarkable.
And story of his life.
There's a new book out on him soon, and he left his first wife to marry Ava Gardner, and...
Hollywood beauty.
Yeah, Hollywood beauty, and regretted it for the rest of his life. Because he'd been 100 this year, Frank Sinatra. He was born 100 years today in Hoboken.
Yeah.
That famous quote, what was it?
The famous quote is Hoboken, where the rest of the United States begins.
That's right, yeah. And the issue was that he left his wife, who was a simple girl, for Ava Gardner, who was a Hollywood beauty. Yeah. But it was Ava, and then he and Ava Gardner broke up. But when they broke up, he thought it was all over for him in Hollywood and all this because she was such a huge star and she'd put him down. In fact, The next film producer she met, she recommended Frank Sinatra for a key role in the film that he won an Oscar in. What was it called?
Was that From Here to Eternity?
From Here to Eternity, that's right, yeah.
Okay. I thought that was the Godfather story, that, he wanted to get him in this movie that, make him an offer he couldn't refuse and all that.
No.
From Here to Eternity, that was supposed to be what that film was, what that storyline was about in The Godfather.
What do you mean?
Well, that basically the mafia bosses went to see the Hollywood director and said, if you don't put this guy in this movie...
Oh, you don't put Sinatra in the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the book I read, it said Ava Gardner actually swung it for him because she thought he was a very talented actor.
No.
Well, why would the mafia want him in?
Well, because that was
he was the mafia's boy.
That was the whole story about Frank Sinatra, that he was always connected to the mob in one way or
another. Well, I know he's connected to the mob down at Atlantic City and all that. Anyway, look, the reason we're playing that is because I keep an eye on all the new publications, you know. Well, I've got connections with publishers. Publishers are always ringing me up and talk to me about projects.
Would you like a free book?
No, they send me the books.
Yeah.
But,
like a book reviewer?
Yeah, a book reviewer, and they put projects to me.
Really?
A footballer wants his life story written, what about it, and all that kind of stuff, But anyway...
God, it just never stops, does it? If you're not telling the cleaners off, if you're not spying on the binman, you're just
like to have an active
fielding
life.
calls all over the place.
Like to have an active life. Anyway, this book has come out called How to Seduce Your Wife, brackets, or anybody else's, which is a bit...
Well, you don't... Have you written this book?
I haven't written this book,
because, you might as well have done.
Actually, although I haven't written it, I could have written it. The author is a guy called Andy Gibney, but what it says is that the best marriages are those where there's plenty of space between the two of you, and you must have two of everything. Yeah. But the main thing
I don't disagree with that in principle.
Right. The main thing you must have two of is a television. Right. That causes the most marital domestic trouble.
And it's funny because years and years ago that would have seemed ridiculous. Yeah. But I mean, most people I think now, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, would have more than one TV in the house.
Exactly. But have you got two proper rooms to put the two tellies in?
Well, actually, we've got. Between the two places I've got about 4 televisions actually.
Yeah, exactly. I've got about how many televisions have I got? I've got 4, 6, about 7. Yeah. Which I watch. On the daily basis.
7 televisions?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Why have you got 7 televisions?
I've got 4 in Surrey and I've got 3 down on the coast.
Why have you got 4?
Because when I was the news hound of news hounds, I didn't like to be out of touch with what's going on in the world for even a second. Right. So I had TVs positioned all over my house so that when Sky News was on, for instance, I could hear every breaking
it's not like you live in
development.
Blenheim Palace, is it? It's not so big that you can just turn the volume up and you still hear it.
No. I had, for instance, in Stockbroker Belt, I've got one in the kitchen, one in the lounge, the big one.
Yeah, but the lounge is not that big that you couldn't hear it from the kitchen.
No, it is, but I can't see the pictures. And if it's a breaking story, an aeroplane sadly has crashed into a mountain or something, you need to see the pictures. I got one in my office, and I got one in my bedroom. Yeah. And I have got one which is mobile, which I...
How about the locked room? You've got one in there?
I haven't got a locked room. Keep going on about a locked room. And similarly down the coast. Now, what I'm saying is, the other things you need 2 of, right?
2 children?
No, 2 bathrooms.
2 bathrooms, probably, yes, I would say.
2 televisions, 2 bathrooms... Even 2 kitchens, if you prefer preparing your own food to your wives.
Wives?
To your wife. You might have more than one wife.
No, I think the secret to a marriage actually is a one big kitchen, because there's nothing nicer actually than having a kitchen as the sort of centrepiece of your entertainment sort of complex, where you've got if people come around for a drink or they come around for dinner, they get a breakfast bar that they can sit at, and if you're cooking or your spouse is cooking, then you can all be part of the same thing. Nothing worse than having a tiny kitchen, because then only one person at a time can get into it.
No, like your tiny kitchen in New York, in Manhattan, when you lived
on
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, when you live in a small apartment,
that's right,
and you suddenly move in with a woman,
that's right,
and suddenly there's now 2 of you living in a one-bedroom apartment. It's really difficult to actually not fall out almost every single day. You've got to be very close to somebody.
And the other thing is essential: 2 computers, so you're not using the same computer. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So years I've been saying this 20 years ago.
You can do whatever you like on your computer without getting found out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was saying this 20 years ago. I said, and people were mocking me. I said, in fact, I would go so far as to say, I'd be happy to have 2 apartments, and they could be next door to each other if necessary. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then the element of romance is still there. Ooh, your place or mine tonight. Yeah. You see what I mean? Right. But you have 2 bathrooms.
Well, that's all very well as long as you're not bringing somebody else there.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you've always got the option to do that, I suppose, if you wish to. It depends on what sort of relationship you've got. But you see, I've been saying this for years and years, and people have been mocking me and saying, well, what kind of relationship is it if you've got 2 of everything? You've got to share.
But not everybody. But not everybody can actually have 2 of everything.
Why
because
not?
They might not be able to afford it. I mean, it's all very well to say you should have 2 bathrooms, but if you live in a small flat, you can't have 2 bathrooms.
No. You see, you don't get me. You don't get me. I could have a big house. Yeah. but I don't want a big house, so I've got 2 reasonable-sized apartments, which I live in.
Yeah.
Well, 3, actually.
3?
But I don't use the third one very much.
One?
You know, up in Orwell Quay in Ipswich, you know.
Oh, the one with attached to the dinghy?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, but I don't use that very much these days.
Do you use that more in the nice weather?
Yes, exactly, yes, when the weather's better. So what I'm saying is, you know, for you to say, oh, you know, you're very privileged to have 2 homes, that's not true. Most people of my generation who, you know, were lucky to buy cheap property in their early 20s and all that, now have massive homes.
Right.
Because
most of them are married as well.
Yeah, most of them are married and divorced. Most of them are married and divorced.
Yeah, and sometimes married again.
Yeah, and married again or something like that. But what I'm saying is, they bought property as cheaply as I did, but just decided to stay in the one.
Yeah.
What I did was I kept sort of selling them and splitting the money and buying another one or something like that, right? And so what I'm saying is...
And creating a massive property empire.
No, not at all. You can have 2 homes. If you lived in a...
Yeah, but not everybody can. That's my point. I mean, there are people listening to this show now who work in jobs which may not have been quite as well remunerated as yours, and that doesn't mean they can buy suddenly loads of property.
Anybody...
You're completely out of touch with reality.
No, I'm not. Anybody of my generation who bought a house, when I did, in the early 20s, for £20,000, which I did... It's now sitting on a house worth nearly £1 million.
Yeah, I know that. But
so
not
they can flog that house and buy 2 flats. Or 3 flats,
unless you've got a time machine, you can't go back to that time and buy a property for that kind of money. So now, if you're trying to get onto the property ladder, it's not quite so simple.
I'm not talking about getting onto it. I'm talking about how you deal with the property you've got now.
Yeah.
And you sell your £1 million house and you buy 2 £500,000 flats in this part of the world. If you live in another part of Britain, if you're lucky enough not to live in London, you can buy 4 apartments.
You're completely out of touch. I mean, talk about man of the people. You've got no idea. You sit there giving advice about marriage. You're not married.
Yes.
You sit there giving advice about property. You've got, you're fortunate enough to have lots of property that you bought when it was cheap. You know, not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
That's the point.
By the way, talking about houses and properties and all that, you will not believe what I read this week. You know Jackie Stewart we were talking about the other night?
Yes.
No, we were talking about Formula 1 champions.
Well, yeah, because there's a Formula 1 quiz coming tomorrow.
Of course there is, yeah. And, well, I was doing a bit of research. And
were you? You were doing research?
Yeah.
Were you?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, I like to keep on top of
I may have to
subjects.
instruct the quizmaster to take any reference to Jackie Stewart out of the quiz now.
No. This is what I found out about him. He won it 3 times and all that, right. He's just made a planning application. He's 65 now.
Yeah.
He lives in Buckinghamshire.
He's older than that.
No, 65.
Sure?
Lives in Buckinghamshire, right?
Yeah.
And get this, he's just applied for and got permission to build his own car wash in his back garden.
What, just for his own car?
Yeah.
How bizarre.
He said, what did he say? He said he's going to use recycled water.
Yeah.
And he has always stressed how important a clean car is to him. He said, my car has to be immaculate. I hate dirty cars.
Well, I suppose that's a fair enough point. Why does he just wash it with a hose like everybody else?
Well, that's what I thought, but he's actually got a car wash. Now, the point is...
I suppose he might say, actually, if it captures the water and recycles it, it might actually be ecologically more sound than just letting the water run all the way down into the drain and away.
It might be, but the point is...
He's 75, by the way, he's not 65.
I said 75.
You said 65.
I said 75.
You said 65.
It's written on a piece of paper in front of me. I said 75.
Well, you said 65. That's why I said, are you sure?
I said 75. You are a thickhead with cloth ears. What I was going to say is,
yes,
I am very suspicious of people who have immaculate cars at all times.
Are you? But hang on, you've got an immaculate car. You don't like a dirty car.
No,
you're always calling my car a piece of old junk.
Funny enough, mine needs the car wash before Easter. I'm not sure when I'm going to do it because I'm so busy tomorrow.
I'll tell you what, looking at the way the papers are suggesting Easter's going to be, I wouldn't take the car anywhere over Easter.
I totally agree.
It's going to be gridlock everywhere.
It says it's going to be the worst Easter ever. And also, I've got another report here which
hang
says...
on, have you seen the time? You'll have to wait for the
Don't you want to hear about my report?
No, I do, but I haven't got time to hear it now. We'll have to wait for it after Porkyvision, because Porkyvision is coming up next. We are the Two Mics on TalkSport.
On DAB, digital radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
The pressure's on now.
Relieve the itch. Talk Sport.
We are the Two Mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on today in around about 6 hours' time or so. Follow at the Two Mics to find it, of course. It's time of the week, though, to look at all the big TV shows of the week. And Mr. Parry's here with Porkyvision. I have to say, last week, you couldn't find anything worth watching. I hope you managed to find something
I did.
It's worth watching.
I did, but I tell you what, I wouldn't watch it again if it came on again. It's called The Ark, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is based on Noah's Ark.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
As you obviously realise.
And presumably it's set in the time of Noah.
Set in
it's
the time
not
of
like
Noah.
a modern version.
Set in the time of Noah, except now that guy from what's that show called? That filthy old guy with the straggly hair and Selfless or something, or
Selfless?
What's he called? Anyway, the actor's called David Threlfall. Shameless. That's him. Shameless.
Selfless.
Yeah. Whatever.
That could be good actually. Selfless.
Yeah. Whatever.
You could star in that, couldn't you?
Anyway, so he
Selfless, starring Mike Parry.
I mean, what an absolute rubbish production. An hour and a half long.
Well, it must have been a lot of money spent on it, though, no?
Well, it must have been. And you think, this is the story of Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
Great biblical story. This is going to be fantastic, all this flooding of the earth and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of special effects.
It was rubbish. First of all, they all started talking Coronation Street accents, right?
Well, they're all from Manchester.
Yeah,
I had no idea Noah was from Manchester.
No, exactly. They all sound like they're from Manchester. They're living in the middle of this desert where there is like sand and rock and nothing else.
Yeah.
Like nothing else. No, you're right. And they act like...
it's a desert.
They act like a nuclear family, and their main concern is that all the sons have grown up within the family, and none of them can have sex at home with their girlfriends or wives.
Why not?
Because the walls are only made of goat skin, and they didn't want their parents to hear them having, the old rumpy pumpy next door.
Well, why don't they just take them somewhere else in the desert?
Well, so they have a discussion about going and having sex in the barn.
Really?
Instead of...
They've got a barn?
They've got a barn. And
what do they build that with, then? Goat skin and what?
I don't know, but the donkeys stay in the barn, as you would imagine in biblical times and all that kind of stuff. So
there are two of them.
Yeah,
Is there two of them?
Two what?
Donkeys.
I don't know how many donkeys there are.
Surely they need two of them for the ark, don't they?
No, the animals didn't go in 2 by 2 or anything like that. So what happens is, old Noah, who seems to spend all his day just sawing up bits of tree and all this kind of stuff. What are you laughing at?
Well, presumably he's making an ark.
No, he's not. He's not making an ark. He goes for a walk in this desert. And by the way, there's not a drop of water for like 1,000 miles on either side.
It's a desert.
You can tell. Yeah. It's arid,
Yeah.
And he meets some bloke. And the bloke says, build an ark.
Right.
So Noah goes back home and says, right, we're going to stop farming now. We're going to build an ark. And they'll say, you've gone off your rocker. So then... none of them will help him build this ark.
Yeah.
Now, he then starts building this ark on his own.
Right.
The ark turns out to be the size of an aircraft hangar.
You mentioned this the other day. Yeah, it's massive, right?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, it's the size
of... Where's he getting all the wood from?
That's the problem is there's no sign of a tree for like 50 miles.
Right.
But every now and then, they show you a shot of Noah with a bit of rope over his shoulder, pulling this log across this arid desert back towards where the ark is.
Right.
But how the ark suddenly goes from nothing to the size of an aircraft hangar. And by the way...
Well, they can't show you in real time,
No.
you have to suspend your disbelief to some extent.
By the way, like an ark, like a ship, has a base like a V.
Yeah.
So it floats on water.
Yeah.
He just built it like a big aircraft carrier, like a shed.
Well, because I think
like a huge shed.
Well, because they didn't necessarily know about that at that time. They would just build something that they thought.
But anyway,
would float on the
all
water.
these strangers kept saying, "Noah, you're right, pal. Too much sun or something.
Yeah.
What are you building there? Like, is that a storeroom?"
Right.
He says, "No, it's an ark. I'm getting ready for the flood." And they say, you might not have noticed, but the nearest bit of water is 40 miles away, the sea. There ain't going to be a flood round here.
Nobody believed him, did they?
Nobody believed him at all, even his own family.
That sounds true enough to the,
to
the Chronicles, doesn't it?
Anyway, one of his sons, called Cannon, right?
Cannon?
Yeah,
like Frank Cannon.
He was fired up, Cannon. He goes off to the big city, which their father had always said, never go to the big city. Right. It's full of, loose women and all that. But Cannon was after the loose woman. So he went off there, for a bit of the old rumpy pumpy. Right. Seemed to be a big element of this. And while he's away, all of a sudden...
I'm told there's a lot of people walking around with hardly any clothes on as well.
There were a few.
Yeah.
But while he's away, all of a sudden there's a bit of thunder and lightning, and then... by this time...
Is this just the first episode, then?
There's only one episode. It was the story of the ark.
Oh, what? It's not a series?
No. This is the point I'm making.
I thought it was like a 10-part series or something.
No. And you got like an hour and 20 minutes through it before you saw any water.
Right.
This is the whole point.
Oh, I see.
So eventually the family think, oh, well, we'll help him anyway, because he's deluded and he's a bit mental and all this kind of stuff. So they help him finish the ark.
Right.
Then the storm comes.
Yeah.
And then they all get in the ark.
Yeah. No animals?
No, don't seem to be any animal. Well, the odd donkey or something. But they didn't, there were no giraffes or anything like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? The animals trooped in 2 by 2. Hurrah, hurrah.
Amazing.
And no sign of it. And then all of a sudden, it was so pathetic, honestly. All of a sudden, the ark shakes a bit. A bit of water rushes past.
Yeah.
And the next scene... shows the outside again, completely like it was before.
Yeah.
And the bloke who told him to build the ark suddenly pitches up again and says, well done, Noah, God has now cleansed the earth.
Right.
The only
How long does this go on for, this show?
An hour and 34 minutes.
And it's just a one-off?
It's a one-off.
Are you sure there's not another second part?
But the thing is, Noah was pleased that God chose him to cleanse the earth. The only problem was Canaan, or whatever his name is, didn't get back in time, so he got swept away with everybody else. The whole earth was cleansed. It was rubbish. You didn't see a flood. There was no flood.
Really?
It was utter garbage. Now, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
The bloke who was the big-time sort of trader in the city...
Right.
And by the way, this is where I got the idea for money...
The city gets completely flooded, presumably.
It gets wiped away, but they don't say anything about that.
Right.
This is where I got the thing about moneylenders. Moneylenders were good people, because they were like the bankers of today. They lend money out so traders could actually go and buy things and all that. Good people. And the head trader was the same bloke, right, who actually... 30 years ago, was a leading member of the cast in the other programme I'm reviewing this week in Porkyvision.
Yes.
Rising Damp.
Rising Damp.
You remember Rigsby?
Yes.
And remember the young medical student who died very sadly and left a daughter to the world?
Oh, yeah, Richard Beckinsale.
Richard Beckinsale.
He was great, yeah.
He was great.
Kate Beckinsale was great.
Beckinsale,
That's right. A lot.
Well, fourth main member of the cast, because there was Miss Jones.
Yeah.
Miss Jones was Frances Latour, wasn't she?
Francis Latour, that's right.
Francis Latour, yeah. And then I can't remember the fourth guy's name, but he was the guy who turned up as the black student from overseas.
Don Warrington was his name, I think.
Don Warrington could be, and his father was an African chief and all that kind of stuff. And Rigsby was terribly racist towards him, because in those days that was the dialogue that you.
Well, except in a way it was making Rigsby look stupid as well.
By way
of sort of explanation.
Asking him if he'd brought his shield and his spear and all that kind of stuff.
It made him look stupid.
It did, yeah. I totally agree.
And the guy was so well educated that he just put Rigsby in his place.
I totally agree. It was a bit like Till Death Us Do Part.
Yeah.
The real joke that
was actually on Alf Garnett.
Johnny Spate, the writer, meant to portray was how bigoted old Alf Garnett was.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
But
you must have watched something other than Rising Damp and the Ark.
No. I watched the Ark but Rising Damp was great because it was all about the sort of times that we lived in. When I was a student, I would have lived in the same sort of thing. You probably did as well.
I never lived
I
never lived in digs as such.
Yeah.
I lived in properties with other people, but I never actually lived in a place where there was a landlord and you had to kind of go and eat with them and all that. I never did that.
But this Ark was a complete waste of time and waste of money. I don't know why anybody ever bothered making it. And the Ark was never used, and there was no flood. They didn't see,
So, without giving away the ending, does it just end with the Ark being sitting in the middle of the desert then?
Yes, that's right. Exactly where it was when the flood came, but you didn't see the flood. All you saw was a bit of water running past and then shaking inside the Ark, and then, cut to next scene.
Yeah.
Next scene, Noah's back out of the Ark, and he's scooping his hand through dry dust and saying, ooh, it's all dry again now. And the bloke who...
What a waste of time.
The bloke who I think is the Archangel Gabriel, who comes down...
The Archangel?
Yeah.
You mean the Archangel?
Archangel, that's right, yeah. Who comes down and tells him to build an Ark.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other unanswered question was, what on earth are we going to do with the Ark now?
Yeah. Well, presumably they can make a proper house and not have to use goat skin for walls.
No, rubbish. I mean,
if you can build an Ark, why did you build a house made of wood?
Unless they've got a handy jumbo jet that needs a garage or something, it's a completely waste of time. It's just a big empty shell. Useless.
But wouldn't he just break it down and use the wood for something
else?
else?
I don't know where he got the wood from. There were no forests or trees around. He must have hauled that wood from about 30 miles away.
Grow, you were telling us that yesterday.
Well, I told you that forests are
when are you going to watch House of Cards? When are you going to get Netflix?
Well, I haven't got that yet, and I don't need it. But the other programme, which I'm watching at the moment, with increasing disillusionment, because it's been my favourite programme for 50 years, literally, is Coronation Street again. The plots in Coronation Street now are so ridiculous.
Now, whenever you talk about Coronation Street...
So ridiculous, you couldn't make it up.
I always get a load of complaints afterwards saying that you're way behind on the actual storyline.
Not at all. Things happening now, like people dropping dead of mysterious heart complaints, Right. I know a lot about hearts. Only 1/3 of my heart works.
2/3 of it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And I know everything about hearts. And people simply do not just drop dead from heart problems. You know what I mean? It's utterly ludicrous. Other people who 1 minute are crippled and unable to walk, next minute are at the local disco giving it a bit, throwing a few shakes
alive,
and all that kind of stuff.
Haven't they got Sarah Harding joining the cast as well?
Well, apparently. Yeah, she is. Yeah, apparently, yeah.
That's quite exciting, isn't it?
That'll be quite exciting. And then
Who's she going to play then?
Oh, some floozy.
Really?
She looks, I'm not saying she is a floozy, but I mean,
I'd be hopeful you wouldn't say that.
No, she can play the floozy. And the other thing is, there's a bloke in it who is suffering from terrible depression, and his wife keeps going around saying to people, leave him alone, he's suffering from clinical depression.
Yeah.
And when she says that, people go, and they sort of fall backwards, you know what I mean? Like as though, I didn't know that sort of thing. But then you find out because of the depression, which of course is a terrible illness and can be treated.
That's what Coronation Street does, is they reflect those kinds of things, don't they?
But he hasn't been paying any of the bills, so everybody's going bankrupt, and all the drivers in the taxi firm he runs are going to be laid off, and all this. I mean, it's just ludicrous. The whole thing is ludicrous because no business could have been run into the ground like that without somebody noticing beforehand.
Yeah. Well,
and they make big issues of things like the chair in the taxi office collapsing, and like chairs in taxi offices are notoriously scruffy, and all the stuffings come out of them and all that. Apparently, they love this chair. It's a monument, and they've got to rebuild it and all this kind of stuff. It's just complete twaddle.
Bizarre.
Absolute
very bizarre.
Garbage and rubbish.
Well, I'm going to set you a task for next week.
Rubbish.
You're going to have to find something you actually like to review, all right, for Porkyvision next week. See if you can find something you like.
Look, I haven't mentioned abandoned. No, banished. Oh, I'll tell you what's going to happen in Banished.
No, you can't.
I can, very quickly.
No, you can't.
The major...
No, you can't.
The major in Banished is actually going to marry one of the convicts.
Right, okay.
Going to marry one of the convicts' girls that he's been, servicing.
Consulting with,
yes,
I think
that's right.
Yeah. That was Porkyvision. Next week, we'll find something that Mr. Parry liked.
Might be, but the point is...
He's 75, by the way, he's not 65.
I said 75.
You said 65.
I said 75.
You said 65.
It's written on a piece of paper in front of me. I said 75. It means that the sound has to be sort of squeezed up when it comes out of this studio through an aerial into the atmosphere and then picked up by your transistor radios. It's compressed and it expands again. And between the compression and the expansion, 75 became 65.
Yeah, that's strange,
for some very weird reason.
We'll try and recreate that.
But I know
time.
it's 75. Listen, have you ever been to
part of your my revenge on your April Fool's gag.
Maybe it isn't. Maybe you're trying to make me look...
know.
Maybe you're trying to make me look stupid. And I'll tell you what, mate, you're going to have to work very hard because I get up with the old worms, I do.
I know you do.
Now then, have you ever been to the Henry Royal Regatta?
I have, yeah.
And what do you think of it?
Well, I went there with a friend of mine who's a very posh guy, who I met through...
it's a pretty posh event.
It's a very posh event. My sister's... it was through like Roslyn Park Rugby Club or something like that, and she met these people through university. Anyway, this guy goes every year, and he invited me one year.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure what to expect, to be honest, because it's not really my thing, a kind of a Hooray Henry event. And I didn't see any of the rowing at all. We parked in...
I mean, did you dress in a blazer?
No, I didn't wear the boater and the blazer and all that. I just said to him, what are you supposed to wear? And he said, what's wrong with wearing a suit? That'll be fine.
No, you should have worn a blazer. You've got to get into the spirit of things.
No, I didn't want to.
Because I think it's a fantastic event.
No, I didn't
People are always trying to put it down. No, of
course you haven't.
No.
They wouldn't let you in.
No, I just haven't had time to go. No. But I'm definitely going to go.
You're not the sort of person they want at the Henley Royal Regatta.
I am, very much so. Hang on, mate. I come from the King's School, Chester.
Yeah.
Before I go, I would go...
It's got nothing to do with... Did you have a rowing team?
Yes, we had a fantastic rowing team.
Do they take part in the Henley Royal Regatta?
Yes, they do.
Do they?
Yes, they do. And the King's School Chester
Did you do any rowing when you were there?
No, I didn't. But I tell you what, I was, of course, the stalwart of the midfield of the King's School Chester first 11.
You were also captain of the second cricket 11, weren't you?
Third cricket 11.
Go. So no time for rowing.
And as I played for English grammar schools as well, I was very committed to football.
Really?
However, one of my teammates, when we got to the second 11...
Most of the rowing's done in the summer, though, isn't it?
No, a lot of it's done in the winter.
Really?
A lot of it's done in the winter.
About that?
I mean, for instance,
it's not a Winter Olympic sport, is it?
It doesn't matter. It's done in the winter because I tell you why. We had a race in Chester every year called the North of England Head of the River Race.
Oh yeah,
and that used to take place in like.
Probably about this time of year, I would imagine.
No, sort of November or somewhere like
that. I doubt that.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, but anyway, look, the reason
I used to row.
Used to row. Row what?
Row, skiffs. The 1 man, the 4 man, the 8 man. We used to row all of those kinds of boats.
A skiff isn't a boat.
Yeah,
skiff's got a sail.
A skiff? No, it's not. A skiff is a 1 man.
You're talking about a scull.
It's a 1 man skiff.
No, you're talking about.
It is.
You're talking about the sculls. No. 1 man, 2 man sculls.
No, it's not.
Have you ever been in an 8?
Yes, I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we used to go down to Putney because my school was in West London.
You go in an 8, mate.
And we had sink.
It would sink.
Yeah,
you are physically too obese to get into a rowing.
I was very much thinner when I was about 14.
Yeah, we'd have to be a lot thinner.
And we had a PE teacher by the name of Jim Clark, who came in, and being a rowing aficionado, you'll know...
Same name as the racing driver?
Same name, yeah. You'll know who Jim Clark was, won't you, being such an expert on rowing?
Yes.
And he came in because there hadn't been rowing at our school before, and he introduced it, and we used to go down to Putney, just behind the Half Moon,
right?
Where we would not only row on the river, but we'd row in the tank, where you actually sit there rowing, and you don't go anywhere.
We had such a good rowing school that we regularly had rowers who went on from the King's School Chester to Cambridge, Oxford, and rowed in the boat race.
Maybe so.
And what happens is...
But you didn't do it, though, so you don't know anything about it. You still don't know who Jim Clark is, do you? I can see you looking at me without any idea.
Don't even worry about Jim Clark.
He was a member of the 1972 British Olympic rowing team.
Well, that's brilliant.
And he was our PE teacher.
I'm very pleased.
So you've started this thinking you're an expert on it, right? And once again, you've been proven not to be.
Yeah, rowing is a very minority sport. But anyway, what I was going to say is, when one of your former pupils, got into the boat race, the headmaster was invited down to get onto the launch that followed them round. Well, one of the launches, loads of launches followed around. And it was a great day out and all that kind of stuff, right? But the reason I'm telling you all this now...
Yeah, why are you telling me?
I will go... When I worked on the Chester Chronicle, the chap who was the sports editor of the rival paper, the Cheshire Observer, which incidentally closed down 3 years after I joined the Chester Chronicle.
Oh, what, because of you?
Yeah.
Well, because of all your great exclusives?
Because of all my scoops, we outsold them.
You really believe all this?
Yeah, I do.
Don't you?
I do. We outsold them. They had to close it down.
Yeah.
And it merged with the Chester Chronicle. And I take a lot of credit for that. But the point is, his name was... I don't know what his name was, but we used to call him Badger because he had a massively huge nose.
Badger?
Yeah, Badger.
Well, badgers haven't got huge noses.
I know. I don't know why we called him Badger, but he had a huge nose. He's a very ugly man, but he used to come in the pub like everybody else. No.
That's just so dismissive.
No, he was.
Very ugly man.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
So let's not worry about him.
And the height of his life and his year and all this was... also, he had a girlfriend who was twice his age, which is really bizarre, because he was quite a young man. He's in sort of, early 30s.
Maybe it was on account of his severe ugliness.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. He had a girlfriend who was about 55 or something. And I mean, let's face it, he wasn't in a position to be choosy, to be honest. But
that
anyway,
may be the case.
Yeah, but the height of his year and everything that he did as sports editor, he wasn't interested in the football, wasn't interested in the cricket, apart from local cricket, and all this kind of stuff. Wasn't interested in anything really, boxing, but he was very interested.
Just rowing.
And he used to go off to the Henley Royal Regatta every year for about a week. And he would, a few days before Henley Royal Regatta, he'd start appearing in the pub in all these silly blazers. He even wore school caps.
Well,
the things I'm talking about.
I refuse to do that.
With hoops in them, school caps with hoops in them. And I said, he used to call him Vice Admiral or something like that because he looked so silly.
Yeah.
But he was taken up by it. The reason I'm telling you all this, right?
Yeah. Why are you telling me all this?
Is because a major breakthrough in the tradition of Henley and a huge knock, really, against the establishment.
Oh, yeah.
In this year's Henley Royal Regatta, right, first of all, they're embracing YouTube.
Right.
So they...
Oh, yeah, they're going to live stream some of the races, aren't they?
Live stream some of the races, quite right.
Yeah.
So people looking at YouTube will have competition for the Two Mikes TV station on YouTube, which shows me making a fool out of you on April Fool's Day. Get to it, folks. It's called Two Mikes TV on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll send a link out for you.
You can see that and a load of stuff.
I'll tell you what, they'd have more fun if they from my experience of going to the Henley Regatta, they'd have more fun if they did a live stream from the Champagne Bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Where there are far more interesting things going on.
Well, that's what I'm doing.
Because after a while, I mean, I'm not by any means a rowing aficionado. I did it when I was young, not for very many, I did it for maybe one season, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not something you want to watch, like race after race after race.
Of course not.
Unless you've got an affiliation. I mean, if your team is racing and rowing, that's fine. But I think I spent most of the afternoon
drinking. So you just walk up and down the riverbank, going from one tent to another. You're
basically.
Drinking. Well, that's why I want to go.
And we had a big sort of picnic. It was nice.
A bit like Cheltenham for
very
me,
civilised,
really.
Yeah.
When I go to Cheltenham, I very rarely see a race, but I do see the inside of a lot of tents.
We watched all the races.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but only from inside a box, really. Oh, no, we went out on the balcony and saw some. You're right, yeah. But anyway, look, this is not the major point of my story. The major point of my story is that for the first time in the history of the Henley Royal Regatta, the chairman of the event is going to be a man who is not an Oxbridge graduate.
Oh, is that right?
I.e.
What, some member of the hoi polloi?
Well, he's not a graduate from either Oxford or Cambridge, and therefore has not rowed in the boat race between Oxford and Cambridge.
What, does the chairman have to have rowed in a boat race?
Well, I'm not saying he has to, but I mean, that's traditionally the boat race in this country.
Yes.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? It's either Oxford or Cambridge who always win it. Why doesn't anybody else ever get a chance to compete?
Because there's only those two
like
in it.
Durham or somebody like that, But guess who it is? Guess who it is?
No idea.
It's Sir Steve Redgrave.
Oh, is it?
And he's,
that makes sense.
Sir Steve Redgrave is the first Henley chairman not to have been educated at Oxbridge.
Yeah.
But he said the regattas...
Well, he knows a thing or two about rowing.
He certainly does. 5 gold medals, is it?
Yeah, I think more than that, isn't it?
No, 5. He said the regatta's reputation for stuffiness is totally misplaced. You've got an image that is very old school, Ty, but that is much more the image than the reality. Yeah. But you're telling me when you went there, it was the image and the reality, aren't you?
It would be pointless to say that it's a bit like going to a football match, because it certainly isn't. And it's very, very much full of people who you wouldn't normally see outside of a wine bar in the Fulham Road, that kind of thing.
No,
but, exactly. Nevertheless, it's not stuffy. But
I'd love to go.
But I don't think you'd get on there at all.
Oh, no, I would. I like mixing in circles of the aristocracy.
No, you'd feel too inferior. Your inferiority complex would kick in. And you'd be sitting there thinking, why would I never have a life like this? Why could I not be accepted by these people? Because that would worry you. Whereas I just visited it, had a good time, kept a couple of people entertained, and then went off home.
Don't be so ridiculous. I feel incredibly comfortable in the company of the aristocracy.
Do you?
I once nearly got a part in Downton Abbey.
Yeah, thanks to me.
Well, why didn't it happen then?
Yeah, because you quit.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't. No. Well, that shouldn't have precluded me from appearing in Downton Abbey.
The fact that you weren't here anymore meant that you couldn't do it anymore.
Well, I could have done it. I could still have done
set it up. Yeah, we wanted to set you up as a footman or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
let me tell you something else about the rowers. Because I once had to sit down at a table with two very, very good-looking men, James Cracknell and Matthew Pinson, who came to one of those Pride of Britain dues that Mirror used to have.
Right.
And the other person on the table was Annabelle Croft.
Oh, yeah, lovely girl.
And talking about not fitting in. When we stood up at the start of because we all got in and sort of said hello, sat down, and it was a table of 8 or something like that, and so they were there with their girlfriends, and Annabelle Croft was there on her own, so I was kind of her date, if you like. And we all stood up, and almost every single one of the people at the table was taller than me,
right,
and absolutely beautiful. And it was the one and only time when I've thought to myself,
how inferior
I wish
you
I could just fall into the floor here, because I mean they were so attractive. These people were so attractive. If you'd been there, you would have been like a midget standing next to these people, because they were all like 6'5".
I have never felt inferior in my life.
Well, I'm not saying
never
inferior.
Felt inferior in my life.
I just said for the first time I sort of thought to myself, I really do feel slightly out of place here,
I
just
can
because
hold
of the way they looked.
Myself in company. Talking about now, you said Matthew Pinson's and who?
And one of his cohorts. It was what's his name? Not Steve Redgrave, but one of the other guys.
But they're rowers now.
James Cracknell.
Right, who's the guy who's the big sailor who married Georgie Thompson?
Oh, what, the guy who's just been going around the world?
No, he hasn't gone around the world. I'm going to tell you this story. Last time I went down to the coast, I went over on the ferry. And
Ben Ainsley, is that what you're talking about?
Ainsley.
Yeah, he's going around the world at the moment, isn't he? Didn't he run aground in Necker or something?
Did he? Oh, I don't know that.
So
anyway, I decided to go down to Old Portsmouth, and I keep my eye on property developments all over the place.
Well, in case you want to buy some more.
And as I'm going towards Old Portsmouth, I noticed this building, huge building, and I think, what an odd building. It's not any windows in it and all that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's the garages, or whatever you call them, for the boats that Ben Ainsley is going to sail in the America's Cup, which is taking place in the Solent next year.
Oh, is it?
Unbelievable.
I thought it was taking place off the coast of San Diego or somewhere.
No. It's taking place here this year.
Is it?
And these boats are huge. I mean, the boats are huge, but so are they're not garages. What do you call them? The
hangars?
Hangars.
Might be a hangar.
The hangars that they go into are massive. I've never seen like it. I don't know what they're going to do with these massive hangars once the competition's over.
Right.
But honestly, it's an amazing structure.
Maybe you should try and get inside and get on board and have a look.
I have had a look. You can walk in.
Can you?
You can walk. Well, if you're like me, you can walk in. You know what I mean? It's no problem at all. But honestly, it really impressed me, and I thought, wow, the amount of money they're spending on this. But it's one of those sort of things about, like, if you have a World Cup and build all the football stadia, what do you do with them afterwards? I don't know what I'm going to do.
Podcast, you'll love the live show. Weekday overnights from 1 a.m. on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM, and via the TalkSport app. TalkSport, your Premier League station, with exclusive commentaries every weekend.
What an absolute corker!
TalkSport.